What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in again this week, and welcome to episode number 2 of a 3-part series where I, as a Pro Tools user, take a look at other DAWs for sound design. If you missed the first video, there will be a card that pops up right here in the corner where we actually took a look at Logic Pro X. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Adobe Audition. And if you like what you see and you want more, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content. And if you'd like to join the Sound Effects Guy Discord server, you're more than welcome to click the link in the description below. With that being said, let's get started. So you may be wondering why Adobe Audition is in this series. And there's actually a couple reasons. First and foremost, Adobe Audition actually kind of has a special place in my history as an audio engineer. And that's because it wasn't always called Adobe Audition. It actually got started as a program called Cool Edit Pro, which was created by the company Centrillium. And in 2003, Adobe bought Centrillium and changed the name of Cool Edit Pro to Adobe Audition. And Cool Edit Pro was the very first DAW that I had ever used many years ago when I first started getting into audio. The second reason being is that there is a lot of really cool integration with the Adobe products that makes Adobe Audition kind of a powerhouse. And that is for a lot of video editors who use Adobe Premiere. As you're editing your videos, you actually have the ability to just double click on your audio tracks and it will open up in Adobe Audition and let you edit right there on the fly. And as soon as you click save, it saves the changes in Premiere. And that way you kind of have several programs that are working together, which is kind of Adobe's thing. And it just really makes it a great asset for a lot of those people who are more on the video editing side than the audio engineering side, and kind of lets them work between programs. It also allows them to hand off programs from the video editor to maybe an audio engineer, and they can all work within the same product. So that being said, that is why it's on the list. So let's go ahead and open up Adobe Audition and see what we can do. All right, so I've got Adobe Audition open here, and what you see on the screen is the Foley cloth movement, because like I said, we are going to be doing the exact same sound editing and design for each of the 3 software. As we did with the Logic, the first thing that I want to be able to do is kind of critique the ability to edit a file against what I would normally do in Pro Tools. And so one of the first things that you're going to notice when you open Adobe Audition is right now we're just in a waveform mode. So I don't have a way to really splice this in this window. And the reason that I say that is one of the great things about Adobe Audition is because it integrates with other Adobe products, you can really kind of customize your workspace however you want. And they do have a bunch of different workspaces that are already set up. For example, you know, if you wanted to do some mastering, they've got a workflow for that. If you're wanting to do some advanced mixing, they have a workflow set up for that too, especially if we were getting into the multi-track, which we will, and we have to, or, you know, whatever your workflow is. Adobe Audition is really modular when it comes to making sure that the workflow that is right for you is what you have in front of you. So by default, like I said, in this workflow or this waveform editor, we can't splice this sound. So we do need to actually right click on it, and we need to add it to the multi-track. Now I do already have a multi-track set up here. And so we're going to go ahead and just zoom in here. And where was it? Okay, we do have a blade tool, and I'm sure that there are, yep, the letter R will allow me to go into my razor, which makes sense. And the move tool is V, which I'm not really sure, but whatever. So we can go in here and we'll just go ahead and chop this up. I do like versus the Logic session that I can kind of drag this around instead of having to try and fiddle with a scroll bar at the bottom. The scroll section is a little easier to get to. And with my blade tool selected, I can just come in here and clip and move on to my next one. Clip, 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 and so on and so forth. And we'll do this last one here real quick. And now that we've got those clipped out, I can do V apparently, and just grab these and move them down to the next track. Now, by default, this wasn't something that I set up. It just happens to line up that I had 6 sounds. By default, you do get 6 tracks, but you can add more. And we'll go ahead and select those. Delete. And now I have 6 individual sounds. That was much quicker than what we did in Logic Pro. I'd say compared to Pro Tools, probably about the same amount of time is what I would need to do for that. So we were able to clip out these 6 sounds fairly quickly. Let's move on to trying to get our dialogue track to sound like a robot. All right, so for this second test, just like we did in Logic, we are going to be taking this test vocal that I recorded, which is this. This is a test audio track to make myself sound like a robot. And we're going to try and make it sound like a robot. Now, this is where Adobe Audition falls short. Now, a lot of the tools in Adobe Audition are fantastic for things like healing audio or audio restoration, or, you know, finding little nuances that might need to be clipped out, like maybe you were doing a voiceover and somebody bumped the microphone. That is where Adobe Audition shines. In the effects department, not so much. So with that being said, if we double click on this and we highlight and we go up to effects, you'll see a lot of the things that I mentioned. You know, there's a lot of things like, you know, your dynamic processing, your multi-band compressors. We've got some delays and echoes, but then it does things like healing audio, like getting rid of silence or any clicks. Does have all the way up to a 30 band EQ, which is great. Modulation, not a whole lot. You get a chorus, a flanger, and a phaser. Noise reduction, if you guys saw the video that I did where I compared the Isotope RX kind of spectral cleaning to what Adobe Audition has, it really shines in this department. Like I said, cleaning up audio is great in Adobe Audition. We do have some reverbs, which the reverbs are pretty good. We've got some distortion and things like that. Stereo imaging. Adobe Audition can actually do, I believe it's up to 7.1 surround sound, which is really cool. Something that you can't do in Pro Tools without the additional hardware, which is the Pro Tools HD, and, you know, time and pitch correction. It does have the ability to bring in external VSTs, which is great. And as I mentioned with Logic Pro, VSTs are more prevalent than the audio units. A lot of the bigger plugin companies, like your Waves plugins or your Slate plugins, your Native Instruments, those all do have audio unit components that way they work with Pro Tools. But a lot of your more boutique plugins, your small plugin programmers, they're primarily doing VSTs. And while I don't have any VSTs actually installed on this computer, we are going to be sticking with what is in the software, just like I did with Logic Pro. And so that being said, there's really not a whole lot that we're going to be able to dive into to try and get this voice to sound robotic, like I had mentioned, but we're going to try. So if we're in this standard view, like I mentioned, we can double click on this and we can come up to effects and we can apply one effect, and then we can apply another and another, and it's just layering those effects on top of each other. If we throw it into our multi-track, we actually have up to 16 spaces that we can add effects to, which is really cool, especially considering Pro Tools only allows us 8. So this way we can apply effects and we can rearrange them in certain ways. So I'm going to try and see if I can't use like some reverb, some chorus and flanger, and try to do the best I can to pull out a robotic voice. All right, so I didn't go through my process of fiddling around with different effects because it would have taken forever. It was fairly difficult to find the right combination of effects, but I think I was able to do it, because if there's anything that I have learned as a sound designer versus when working on music, when you work on music, you want to stay inside certain parameters in your plugins. But when it comes to sound effects, we will slam knobs all the way up and just kind of see what kind of crazy stuff we can create, which is what I ended up doing here. So for a robot sound, even though my vocals were kind of monotone, I wanted to go in with the automatic pitch correction. And I ended up doing the extreme correction. So it's just as much as it possibly can, trying to keep the tone as monotone as possible. And from there, I actually ended up putting 2 different flangers on here. And so one of them being robotic, which by itself was okay.
This is a test audio track to make myself sound like a robot.
But adding the pitch correction and this other flanger, this is what we end up getting.
This is a test audio track to make myself sound like a robot.
Which kind of has very similar to the dialects from Doctor Who. Kind of similar. And essentially what's happening here is there's a lot of comb filtering between the 2 flangers. And that comb filtering is what I would use, like I mentioned in the Logic video, if I didn't have any plugins. I would force duplicates of the tracks to comb filter each other, and that would kind of make a robotic sound. In this, I was able to do it with the flangers. So while it did take way longer than what I would have done in Pro Tools, it is doable. So with that being said, let's move on to the last test, where we take the different layers of the laser sound and see if we can't create one kind of epic laser charge up and fire. All right, so for our laser sound, I wanted to include the import process, because as part of kind of comparing these workstations is talking about workflow. And the way to import multiple audio files into an Adobe Audition session is a little different. There's 2 ways really that we can do this. If we go up to File and Import File, we can select all of our files, but it's going to put it in waveform. And then we can then select each of these and we can edit them individually, or we can right click and insert into our multi-track. However, over in our multi-track, what we can do is under multi-track, we can go insert files, and then it asks us if we want to insert these. Now, if we do, it actually puts them all on the same track, which isn't exactly what we want, but as we've learned, it's actually super easy to just go ahead and drag these down. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull all these to their individual tracks. And just like I did in the Logic video, I'm going to go ahead and edit these out real quick because there's a couple of these files that have a charge up and a discharge all in the same file. And there's no sense in you watching me edit these if you watch me edit the cloth. So I will be right back after I've edited these files. All right, so I've got these split now. And just like I did in the Logic session, I do want to put all the discharge sounds on their own tracks. Now in here, we can come up here, and I was wrong before when I said 7.1. It's 5.1 that Adobe Audition has the ability to do. But we can add multiple tracks at once. So if we click on this, we can go ahead and set. We're going to add another 3, and they are stereo tracks. And now I can move these discharge files down. And I've never tested how many tracks you can have. Oh, that's interesting. Automatic crossfade. Learn something new every day. That would definitely come in handy. And it looks like it is the appropriate type of crossfade if you were trying to do like infinite loops or something. Good to know. And it also has kind of like Audacity does. It has the snap to end of another clip, like almost like a smart snapping, which Logic had, but it was weird. It called it a smart snapping, but it kept trying to snap it to the grid, and maybe there was a setting that I could have changed in that video. But let's go ahead and I'm going to line these up just like I did in the other video. Okay, so before mixing, we end up with a pretty similar result where the charge up sounds really nice. And then because we have so many layers on the discharge layered together, it clips like crazy. So we can open a mixer here. Just like with everything else, I'm going to bring it all down because subtractive mixing is way better than additive mixing. And that kind of goes across the board, whether you're working on sound effects or movies or music or... And like I had mentioned before, with Adobe Audition's modularity, yes, right now these are in 2 separate tabs, but I can actually drag this to different sections. And that way I can kind of see where my waveforms are at. It's a little bulky. I would recommend like multiple monitors if you're working in Adobe Audition, which I have multiple monitors. It's just unfortunately OBS is only recording one screen. So I'm trying to do all this, you know, in a section where you guys can see it. So that being said, I am going to go ahead and leave it up here. That way you can see the full mixer. I've got this set so that it will loop at the end. So I don't really have to worry about my waveforms too much. So then we can loop this through multiple times and it's just going to keep playing and we can adjust our mix accordingly. All right, so I've got these leveled to where we're not really clipping at all, but I did notice that our mix levels here, because in Logic we didn't do any sort of EQing or anything, and here we're not doing any sort of EQing, but our levels are fairly different, which may boil down to the program's algorithms and how they handle levels and the coding and a whole bunch of back-end stuff that I'm not aware of, but it is interesting to note. So that's where we end up with that sound. And one of the cool things, though, since we're in this mix window that I do want to bring up, is we don't have to apply an EQ as an effect. Very similar to Logic, and I didn't end up showing this in the Logic video, but we do have an EQ section here that we can actually just click on. And it's a 5-band EQ and has a high pass filter and a low pass filter in it, so that right there in the mix window you can edit the EQ. But we were successfully able to obviously edit the Foley into multiple clips. It took forever to get the robotic sound, and we can mix already made layers for a sound effect and create one kind of massive sound effect. And the reason that I didn't go too deep into this is because this video would end up being ungodly long. I really just wanted to show off the basis of the programs and kind of how they compare to what I'm used to in Pro Tools, and to kind of give you guys some feedback. So being 2 videos into this series, if I had to say between Logic and Audition so far, it's apples and oranges, really. Adobe Audition, like I said, is fantastic for editing. If I were using third-party VSTs, I could probably do a lot more in Adobe Audition, and that in and of itself, between the 2 programs that we've reviewed so far, would probably make Adobe Audition actually my choice between Logic and Audition. But stock, the fact that Logic has so many different plugins and has instrument support really makes that stock program my choice so far. But next week, we're going to be taking a look at Reaper. Now, the difference between Reaper and Logic and Audition is, while I've used Logic and Audition before, I've never opened Reaper. So it's going to be a learning experience, and if you're along for the ride, then I look forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget that there's also still plenty of time to get your entry in for the I Challenge You to Sound Design This Clip number 7. Entries are actually due next Friday. So when you upload them to YouTube, make sure that you put hashtag the sound effects guy in the title, because that's what I'm going to be looking for when I review those clips. And speaking of reviewing, there will be a live review on December 4th at 3 p.m. Until next time.